Welcome to Franchise Empires, where aspiring entrepreneurs learn exactly what it takes to become a successful franchise owner, from one location to 10 and beyond. I'm the Wolf of Franchises.
Hey everyone, it's the Wolf. Today on the show we have Dan Claps and Zach Nolte, co-founders of franchise Playbook, who just acquired their first franchise brand. Both Dan and Zach have extensive experience in franchising. And now, with Voda Cleaning and Restoration, they've joined forces and are looking to build a new age home services franchisor holding company. They're off to a strong start with Voda Cleaning and Restoration. So if you're interested in buying a home services franchise or want to learn about what opportunities could be out there as a franchisor entrepreneur, then you'll enjoy this conversation.
The Wolf of Franchises is the CEO of Wolfpack Franchising, as well as a creator at Workweek Media. All opinions expressed by the Wolf and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Wolfpack Franchising or Workweek. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. The Wolf, Workweek, and Wolfpack Franchising may maintain positions in the franchises discussed on this podcast.
Dan, you and I, obviously, I was on your podcast, 5-6 months ago. So we've chatted before and we've gotten to know each other. Zach, you're a new guest in the Wolf of Franchises universe. But I think a good starting spot before we get into Voda Cleaning and Restoration would just be, Dan, you've definitely had some past experience starting and running businesses in the franchise world. Do you want to kind of just give an overview of what you were doing before you became CEO and co-founder of Voda?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Wolf, for having us. We're super excited to be on here. I've been looking forward to this. I'm Dan Claps. I'm CEO and co-founder of Voda Cleaning and Restoration. We're actually the first cleaning and restoration franchise opportunity that combines them. We'll get into that. But I've been in franchising since 2014. I got into it at a young age. I had a business in college that I started and learned that I had more of a job than a business. It wasn't systematized. I couldn't sell it. It was just more of a job. And so nobody wanted it to buy. So I learned a lesson there and decided to unravel that and go into franchising because of the systems that I could learn from buying a franchise. It's all about systems. And as I explored franchises in 2014, I really fell in love with the process of exploring the options and the way that someone would present them to me. And so instead of buying a franchise, I got into a franchise for business and franchise consulting. So I was actually a franchise consultant in a franchise, if that's not confusing enough. Did that for a couple of years. I did pretty well. But I realized that I was still now building more of a job than a business that ran without me. And so in 2016, I was fortunate to meet my previous partner who we formed a lead generation company called Career Transition Leads. And so from 2016 to 2022, we built that. And that grew to be a pretty large multi-million-dollar organization doing lead generation in franchising. And so through that company, I look back on some stats. I indirectly and directly helped over 1,000 people become a franchise owner. And as kind of silly as it sounds, I really believe it's like what I was put on earth to do, as at least for my career, is like to help people become a business owner. I love it. So in May of last year, I exited that business when a private equity firm acquired it, and I knew I wanted to stay in franchising, but I needed to do something new. But I wanted to hold on to that calling of helping people become a business owner, and so decided, you know what? I've helped a lot of people become a business owner. Why not marry the ones that reach out instead of working with them short term? Let's work together long term. And so I decided to be a franchisor.
Beautiful. Okay. And yeah, so I know you guys are obviously kind of just getting up and running with Voda Cleaning and Restoration. I remember the last time we spoke, this was off, not in a podcast or anything, but you were looking at like small businesses to acquire to then go and franchise it. So is that what Voda is today? Is it did you kind of take it off as an independent small business owner and then you've just now are franchising that concept out?
Yeah. And it's a great story, but I want to backtrack for a moment because what happened was I decided want to be a franchisor. And then I'll be honest in saying that I quickly realized I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I've run a business. I've been successful as a CEO. I understand franchise development. And I understand franchising intimately, but I had never been a franchisor. And I knew that to get to the level I wanted to get to, I needed a partner. And so Zach and I, that's a story that maybe Zach could take.
Yeah, it kind of starts with two, like a franchisor is really like two different businesses all in one.
Yep.
You have the franchise development side of things where you got to find that right person to come into your system, and then you have to make that person successful. And to me, those are two completely different skill sets. And so where I've struggled in my career is in the franchise development side of things. Dan has excelled. And then where I have excelled, Dan just doesn't have that experience yet. So when we were finally kind of we're introduced to each other at that point where he wanted to start this business and I was looking for something a little bit bigger than what I was currently doing. It just seemed to be that perfect marriage of skill sets and also backgrounds. I have a background of 10 years of running a franchise company with Kitchen Solvers, and it was a kind of an older brand, and it was in more of a re-emerging standpoint. So I was dealing with a lot of old school franchises, trying to change the game, bring more technology. And so it had its own headaches where I had to kind of introduce these new ideas and make this business or make that business scalable, something that you could build for a long-term exit plan. So when this opportunity presented itself, it was like, this is just the perfect kind of marriage for the two of us. And we spent probably a month and a half kind of going back and forth, late nights and weekends, really trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And then it started getting into what industries do we want to get into. And I don't know how many different avenues we went down for the industry, but we really kind of settled into the restoration space. And I think then that kind of progressed into, all right, now let's start interviewing restoration businesses, and we looked at hundreds of different restoration businesses in itself, and we kind of really fell in love with this one specific model, which then has turned into Voda. And so we can definitely dig into that a little bit because that's a fun story as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we'll dive into that in a sec. But so were you a franchisee for Kitchen Solvers, or you were on the franchisor team helping franchisees?
Yeah, I was hired by Kitchen Solvers in 2014, and then I went up the ranks a little bit there and became the president of the company in about 2016, and started running that company. And it was more or less, there was some turnover at the upper management side of things. And it was really the push of the franchisees at my very young age that they kind of pushed me into that position. I was a little reluctant at the time because I didn't feel like I had the skill sets in order to do so. But they all believed in me and trusted me. And so they were the ones that kind of pushed me up into that space. And I loved it. I mean, I learned so much about managing franchises, really understanding what the franchisees want, and really focusing on franchise satisfaction. I think if you start with franchise satisfaction, everything else kind of falls in line with per unit metrics, understanding what they need and want, building out advisory councils and how to communicate appropriately. All those things just were kind of learned on the fly for me, but also allowed us to really kind of scale this really cool culture that we created at Kitchen Solvers. Yeah,
no, okay. That's fantastic. And I mean, yeah, now I can see why you two partnered up. Definitely a good match there. Mm-hmm. Well, so you guys said you did a bunch of research. Why did you decide on restoration as the category?
Yeah. Well, I'll jump into that for a moment. You know, we decided, we knew we wanted to be in home services. It's a $500 billion annual industry, according to a Home Advisor report. And, you know, it's a massive industry. It's Zach's background. I had a lot of experience in doing development in that space. I love it. I'd buy a home services business if that was what I was going to do in franchising. So we knew we wanted to be in home services, and we looked at dozens of industries, and really it was a tall order. So I'm going to give you some of it, not all of it, because it'll get a little boring, but just to name a few of the list. We wanted a business that was a need, not a want. We wanted a business that was growing. It's a $200 billion industry growing 5% year over year. And so we wanted to be in that. And it's a misspoken statistic. It's a $210 billion commercial industry and a $290 if you include residential. So it's a massive industry growing 5% year over year. We wanted a business that we love that third party pay. Insurance pays a lot of the time, which is nice.
Yep.
Floods and water damage are going to continue to happen. They've happened throughout history. They're going to continue to happen. There's climate change effects where there's more. And then the average age of the home in America, the infrastructure gets older and older. And so there's more and more pipes freezing and issues with water damage. It's 14,000 water damage cases a day. And so we basically wanted a business that was easy to open. It was scalable. We get our 30 to 90 days you could be open. And then finally, we loved the fact that it was non-licensed labor. You don't need, there are some states, there's 6 states that you need some certifications, but overall we can train people how to do restoration work. And so that was what some of the indicators of why we wanted to be in restoration specifically.
No, that's great. It sounds like you guys definitely did your homework, which is good to hear. You'd be surprised. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but obviously not every franchisor does their homework. So that's always good. Yeah, I mean, I love it. Need, not a want. And then the non-licensed labor, that's also critical. You know, I do see a lot of folks, which this isn't to say it can't be done or you can't be successful, but my first job out of college was in the HVAC industry, and so I know intimately the struggles of basically a non-licensed owner getting into a field where you literally then depend on your labor and all the licenses they need, and there's issues that can develop rather quickly if you physically can't do the work. So yeah, that's fascinating. And we also had I had a Serve Pro franchisee on recently, and he was also getting into LE Mental Health, another franchise, but he did give us some insight into kind of the commercial aspect and, getting paid by insurance providers. And it's definitely overall a net positive for sure. But I want to get into that, but I also am curious because it is fascinating, I think, what you guys have done. And I think it's a playbook. It's not for everyone. It definitely requires a bit of sophistication. But the idea, there's this whole concept of the silver tsunami, the gray wave, whatever you want to call it, right? Baby boomers retiring. There's all these small businesses up for grabs. And what you guys have done is you've just acquired a small business, and now you're franchising it. And I say it's in a good way, but it's a bit of a cheat code, right? In that you didn't even have to build a business. You just acquired a cash flowing asset. And now you're franchising it, which, folks have been listening to this podcast for a long time. I've had folks, like Koala Insulation, the founder and CEO of that. It's an insulation franchise, and they're getting, if you do the math on the royalties and everything that they're collecting, it's well into, they're approaching 100 million valuation. So you guys have a ton of upside. So yeah, anyway, what I'm saying is, kind of, can you walk us through that process of identifying the business? How long did it take to find a business? Where did you even look for these? Like, were you just hunting on a biz buy sell? What was that like?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you said. And I agree with you. I mean, most people start a business, they have success in their local market, whether it's plumbing or roofing, whatever. And then they see the success and they realize that franchising is a great way to scale their business. And they are expert at plumbing and they decide to franchise. But the business was built as a plumbing business. Franchising is its own business. And what's interesting is a lot of franchisors, as they were successful in their local market, they don't know how to franchise, and it takes a lot of time to learn. And a lot of those mistakes you can't undo because, as Zach said, once franchisees are in the system, you can't undo a lot of it. They have to all then agree to change. And so what I look at us is we're a franchisor company. We went into this with the design, and that changes our decisions around how do we make this successful as a franchisor and for our franchisees, not as a owner operator of a business. And in some ways, I mean this in a nice way, not an arrogant way, but like your business in the local market and whatever vertical you're in, it's kind of like the minor leagues. When you go into franchising, it's the major leagues. You can't mess up. You have people investing their life savings or sometimes. And, we take that very seriously, that responsibility. And so with being a franchisor, what we did was we knew we wanted to be in restoration. So this is a fun story. I'll try to keep it brief. We were, biz buy sell. We had guys on our team and a girl on our team just scouring the internet. And I was driving around meeting with founders because a big ingredient is if the business checked the boxes, we needed a partner in the founder. And so in like months of doing that, just bopping around, looking at brands, or businesses, I had a call. I got a connection to a business in Virginia, and it's a funny story because I equated to the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton, and a nicer, more ethical version. I know he in that movie is a little harsh, but in some ways I resemble him in like he's a bit manic. He's kind of crazy, but one thing he is he's driven, right? And his work ethic's strong.
Yep.
And so I say to myself, it's in Virginia. I live in New York City. It's a 4.5-hour drive. I'm going to shoot down Monday morning, 6 a.m., get there for lunch, check out the facility, and I'll shoot back that day trip. I get there. We do lunch. The founder's an incredible person. I go to see his business. I've never seen more systems in place in a non-franchise company. And I call home and say basically, hey, I'm going to stay here for 2 days. I'm not leaving. So it's kind of like that creepy Ray Kroc character that didn't leave.
Yeah.
But the founder of that business, who's our partner, he moved here from Serbia in 2005 with nothing. Didn't speak the language. His buddy was a lifeguard, and so he came and saw that he was making money and coming back to Serbia each winter. So he came, did the lifeguard thing, went back to Serbia each winter. He did that twice. The second time he got back to Serbia, he realized that's it. The second he landed, this is the last time. Next summer, I'm going back. I'm going to make it in America. So he moved here. Long story short, it's kind of funny. He was a security guard in a nightclub. He met his wife, through that nightclub. So he quits because he decides as they're getting engaged, not the place to work. But at the time he's quitting, he notices there's always this other European gentleman that's always in the nightclub. So he always have a lot of money. And so kind of like in that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, where Jonah Hill's character sees Jordan in the diner.
Oh, yeah.
And says, if you show me a pay stub, I'll quit my job right now.
Right now.
It's kind of like that. He says, hey, I just quit. I have 2 weeks. What do you do? Like, I'll come work, for you. And the guy's like, I do carpet cleaning. And so he ends up working with that guy. That guy goes back to Europe, says, run my business, we'll split the profits. So Dragon, the founder, ends up being kind of like a hybrid franchisee. Learns the business. They end up moving on eventually. And then he starts his company in 2009. So the business has been intact since 2009.
Damn. That's a hell of a story just from that founder himself. Holy crap.
And just to summarize that, so he took that from a carpet cleaning business, built it up. Restoration work kept coming in because when you get in the home doing carpet and the business doing carpet and floor, it resonates and it leads a lot to restoration often. And so he ended up building this very strong empire really in restoration and cleaning in the Northern Virginia area. And really what sets his business apart and why we became so interested was the fact that they do the cleaning and the restoration.
Got it. So are you, if I'm hearing this correctly, if you're a carpet cleaning business, I mean, as you said, there's a lot of water damage already occurring. So naturally, maybe you're getting carpet cleaning business because someone just had an issue with their water. So like it was a natural kind of funnel where he went from, oh, we're already doing the carpet cleaning. Why don't we also do the restoration work as well? Because it's probably like a dual combo for a homeowner.
That's where we really start to really love this model, is that you have the cash flow of carpet cleaning, which is a little bit more predictable. You're running like 2 jobs a day. You can easily do digital campaigns. You get your name out there. It's a need that people need to get their carpets cleaned and their stains and whatever else. So like you're getting into the home. Once you're into the home, then you can start listing off your other services: mold remediation, air duct cleaning, and water mitigation. I mean, how many homeowners do you know that have like a business card or a business top of mind for if their basement were to flood? They don't. They're not even really sure what the next step is if their basement does flood. And we're talking about things like your washing machine all of a sudden overflows and you wake up 2 days later, go down to your basement and notice there's water everywhere, that type of damage.
Yeah.
And so at that point, now you have the ability to extract the water out of the basement. Now you have the ability to clean that carpet and replace it. And so there's just all these different other revenue streams that come from that one type of homeowner. And from a business model, it allows us to scale quickly with the cash flow of the carpet cleaning, start building the relationships, getting the name out there. And at some point, then you're starting to change the business model a little bit into more of a restoration heavy. A lot of companies that focus on restoration first, it takes them a lot longer to get those relationships built up with insurance companies, property managers, homeowners. And we have an immediate kind of cash flow source that allows us to get into the home. And so that's why we just absolutely loved it, the model between the two, almost kind of separate business models all in one.
Fascinating. Yes. Is there, it sounds like, so your wedge right into the home is the carpet cleaning business. And then from there, you're layering in the restoration services over time.
Yeah.
But from the carpet cleaning perspective, you know, like what's the landscape like when you assess that? And, you know, if I had to guess just based on other home service franchisees and franchisors, and even within the world of Twitter that I'm in, there's a lot of just independent small business owners who are attacking the home services space because it does seem to be a lot of, let's call it legacy operators who have been in business for decades. And basically, they're still operating with fax machines. You can't even get a quote via their website. They don't pick up the phone. So the competition level seems to be not too, it's a low bar to get over. And all you have to do really is build a modern, you got to do the work. So I don't want to sugarcoat it, but you got to do the work. But if you have a website, modern website, that actually allows people to, get in touch with you, and maybe you do some local SEO campaigns, things like that these legacy operators, they haven't caught up with the times. People seem to have moderate to pretty great success, honestly, in home services. So what's the case, though, with carpet cleaning? Is it along those lines?
Yeah. So I think it really comes down to a lot of it comes actually our branding. We spent a pretty penny and worked with a really awesome agency in creating our brand. And so it's doing a lot of like those little things correct and doing it right the first time. There's also another point too that someone made to me, and it really resonated, is that there's a lot of these really old legacy carpet cleaning and restoration companies out there, and for them to make small minor changes in their technology, that's a massive like upbringing, a massive hurdle for them to overcome. And so we're able to kind of come in with new technology that they know about, but they're not able to implement. And so we now have these like technology partners that we can come in and really streamline that process from a consumer standpoint and make it easier for them to work with us. And then also too, on the restoration side of things, we have these programs and this technology that we're able to now streamline a lot of the communication with insurance adjusters and whoever else. And so just that alone, and us not having anybody to answer to except for setting up the operations 100% perfect from day one, we now have this huge advantage over everybody else that's been in business for quite some time.
Fascinating.
And just to piggyback on that for a moment, carpet cleaning alone is a $6.6 billion industry growing 6% year over year. And we saw that it was also... So the best way I can explain why we got into these spaces is they were both fragmented. There wasn't a consistent and predictable experience in that area. And when you look at brands like Dunkin' Donuts, Massage Envy, Orange Theory, Club Pilates, whatever household name, what they usually did was they came into a market where it was fragmented and they created a consistent experience. So for example, Massage Envy, before Massage Envy, it was like expensive massage, random, janky, weird massage. Like honestly, you don't know what you're going to get, right? Cheap, but not consistent. And then Massage Envy created this idea of, hey, anyone should be able to have access to a massage on any street corner. Club Pilates did the same thing with Pilates. CertaPro with painting, right? So, there are some big players, of course, in restoration, but what we saw was it's a massive industry. Even $1 billion system-wide franchisor is basis points of 1% of the market share. And so what we saw was, hey, we're not competing with them anywhere. We're competing with the mom and pops. Now, when you invest in a franchise, you're investing in two things, a system and a brand. Now, in an emerging brand, which is not for everyone, but with an emerging brand like us, you're not investing in a brand everyone knows yet, but you're investing in a brand that is going to stand out. So for example, McDonald's in the 50s, people didn't buy McDonald's because everyone in America knew McDonald's. They bought it because the system made sense, the early franchisees. The system made sense, and then those golden arches were going to explode. You could tell that would penetrate markets the way it was back then, especially in the 50s. So what we did is, to give credit to the agency we used, they work with companies like Home Depot, Target, Buffalo Wild Wings. They use market graphic, demographic, and psychographic data. And so really we created a brand that we knew would stand out in the minds and hearts of the average homeowner of today. Us, right? We own the home, right? The oldest millennial is 30 or something like that, right? So the homeowners' demographics have changed. And so our brand really stands out. And then, last thing I'll say is I think when it comes to carpet cleaning specifically, where we're thriving in the flagship location is it's really centered around the customer experience and then being wowed in that sense. I mean, there's only so much you could do to clean a carpet, not to put it down, but it's like, it's clean or it's not clean, right?
Yeah.
It's the way that we approach that service that I think is a USP for us.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I love the strategy. But when it comes to branding, so for home services, I definitely agree. I mean, a modern brand, and especially being able to relate to maybe the millennial demographic is certainly important, especially really at the local level for a franchisee, because that kind of goes back to what I was saying with the legacy operators, and their websites are crap, and the brands along with that are probably just a lot of people, at least in the HVAC world, it was just very generic names. It was something blank heating and air conditioning, and it was just every brand seemed the same. So
John's Heating and Air.
Yeah, just nothing to it. And there was one company though that was the biggest by a mile. They do like 80. They're not a franchise, but in New Jersey they do about 85 million a year, and it's called Air Group. But they have these pristine white or pristine blue trucks, and you notice it when you're just if you're driving on the highway and you see their truck, you're like, whoa! And so it sticks out in your mind, and the way the logo is too. But they crush.
Okay.
So yeah.
I have to interject for a second, just because it's crazy you just said Air Group. So John Conforti, the founder of Air Group, in 2014, I became decently close with him.
No way.
When I was a business broker, I'm efficient. I like to be efficient. And I found out about Air Group, and I somehow got in there, and I got to go to his facility. It's a $50+ million organization, and he kind of gave me some mentorship in a few meetings.
Is this the oldest? Because there's like 3 John Conforti. They're like third generation owned now.
The original. Well, his dad started the business, so I think he's passed away. Okay. This guy, John Conforti, is the son who's like 70 something.
Yep.
So slick back, great. I want to be John Conforti when I'm his age.
Absolute legend.
He's driving around his Bentley. He's got his yacht in Naples, Florida. Yeah. He's there at 6 a.m. though, with all the energy that you can have.
Wait, so I didn't mean to interrupt, but how'd you get in? What was the?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you probably won't remember. This was like a brief little stint, but for me, it was like the biggest deal in the world because I was so early in. And what happened was I got to meet with him. And, he basically said, Dan, listen, my marketing strategy is acquisitions. I can market and not know where the money's going to go, or I can buy a company. I lose 1/3 of the business because they wanted, if it was Tim's, like we said, if it was Tim's, HVAC, they don't want me. But 2/3 I keep. I know where my marketing dollars are going because I acquired those customers.
Yeah.
So I went in there and basically said, all right, I'll go out and I'll find HVAC companies and I'll feed them to you and you acquire them.
There you go. Okay, I see the angle now. Yeah, that's hilarious. Wow. So yeah, I mean, I worked for it's a franchise, but majority of the locations are co-op. So it's kind of this weird hybrid cooperative model / franchise called Johnstone Supply. But so we were a supply house for HVAC, HVAC contractors, plumbing contractors, and I was just a territory manager trying to bring in business with, so I got to know Air Group. I mean, they already were buying from the Johnstone owner group that I worked for, but that was my introduction to brick and mortar / franchise ownership in a very, very niche franchise. But that's hilarious that you actually know them. So anyway,
I'll shut up about him. The last thing I'll just say is because it's just an interesting thing. Like the 2 things about him that I remembered was he made us meet him at like 6 a.m., like before the day got busy. He had this glass office where you could see in, And I just was so like, we were on the phone with someone today that's very wealthy that we needed to talk with, and he was in his business working, doing. I like people that get their hands dirty, which actually brings us to something we were talking about before recording about owning a business. But anyway, funny coincidence, man. That's crazy.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, 85, probably more. I haven't been at Johnstone for 4 or 5 years now, but they were an $85 million business in New Jersey, and yeah, so they're absolutely crushing it. But anyway, back to what I'm saying about branding. So, what are your thoughts on? So let's say like the power of brand at the franchise level, because we just went over it. Like it definitely matters for your local franchisees. I guess like this is just honestly a curiosity question for how you guys think about it. But for me, like your consumer facing brands like the Massage Envies, the Orange Theories, McDonald's, restaurants, all those concepts, that definitely matters. I actually believe, and I don't know, maybe this is a bit of a hot take. It seems to be split on Twitter, at least when I've discussed this, is that for the, home services type brands, operations and the playbook matters like 10 times more than the brand, because even the biggest, like CertaPro, I think you mentioned before, right? Like, sure, they're massive in house painting, but if you asked, 20 homeowners, hey, what's the biggest painting brand in America? No one's good. I would be shocked if even one was like, I don't know. Like, as far as they know, CertaPro could just be a local painting company to them. But that's why CertaPro is amazing, because like they know how to get their franchisees business. Whereas again, you ask about workout brands, fitness brands and food brands, people can name them because they're actively consuming, in those businesses. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I'm just curious how you guys think about it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too, especially in the home services space. I don't know how many times in a smaller town where I'm from, like you see a Mr. Electric and no one knows that's a franchise.
Yep.
Everybody's like, that's a cool branded truck, they're local and whatever else. Like, no, that's a massive franchise. And you can say that about a number of other home services brands. And so I think it's more or less that feeling that it's a big company within a small community. And so whether they know that it's a franchise or not, they still want us to show up to their home with professional shirts on, a really cool wrapped vehicle, and have that level of expertise going into it. And that's what their whole brand strategy comes into, and not necessarily being so focused on like the national recognition of it. And I think that there is a key differentiator between that and like the Anytime Fitness is out there, where everybody knows that's a franchise, this is who they are, they're in this space, and it's not the same for home services.
When you see a Voda truck drive down the street, like it definitely turns heads. It doesn't matter if that's kind of what I was saying. Like it doesn't matter if everyone knows about it. It's that truck will turn heads there,
yes.
Right? Your brand is amazing. Like this, I remember the first time I saw the Wolf of Franchises and the branding. Honestly, like it stood out in such a way. It took like this space of what the consulting and advisory space up 10 notches. And so like I think that it's not about like everyone knows the Wolf of Franchises. It's about the second they see it, every human nature is to go, whoa, that's pretty cool. I what is that? So that's what we were intentional. Like, what the hell is Voda, right? Like that was the idea, was to, now Voda means water in Serbian, but and there's a reason. Okay. Yeah, there's water to me. Water's our friend and our foe, right? Like think about it. It's the most important thing we needed to live. It's clean, it's pure, but it also could like kill you and drown you, right? So, and water sucks when your basement's flooded. So, but we named it Voda because we wanted to pay homage to the Serbian roots, which, by the way, that's a whole story. Restoration is like this Hungarian, Serbian rooted industry. Like Restoration
really?
One is, yeah. Like Restoration One, United Water Group, us. I think another one, a lot of the franchisors come from, for whatever reason, Serbia, Hungary, and Hungary. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's a cool little history lesson. I didn't know any of that.
Just coincidence that happened.
Well, so you mentioned earlier, I don't think I've ever come across a carpet cleaning and restoration franchise, and I believe you mentioned earlier that you guys are the first. Why? I guess, can you confirm that what I'm saying is correct? And then B, if that is the case, why do you think other restoration brands haven't done it? Because it does seem like a really smart fit.
Yeah, I think that, but I don't know why they haven't done it. Maybe they dabbled in it or whatever else, and maybe it didn't work out. We do know that there is a little bit different strategy on like the project management side of things. Whereas like carpet cleaning needs to be very dialed in. Everybody needs to know where they're going. The efficiency and a lot of the profit margin is in making sure like drive time is maximized between jobs. Whereas restoration is a little bit more emergency and kind of call to action type of stuff. So when we work with like our call center, that all of our leads are funneled, no matter what their carpet cleaning or restoration, are all going to this call center. They have to be the ones on the phone to kind of determine if this is a carpet cleaning job, can I schedule this? And then also, can I bid this job out for the franchisee versus restoration? It was like, hey, I need to forward this right away because there's an emergency we got to deal with. So there are some nuances in some of that, but what we really love and what we're able to leverage is like the utilization of our vans. We're setting these vans up so that they can do carpet cleaning or restoration. And we've also, us being newer to the industry, we've already kind of configured this van in a way that is different than most people have seen. And so we're maximizing the amount of space so that we can carry more equipment with us. And so if we are on a carpet cleaning job and all of a sudden we get that call that says, hey, you need to be on this job, we need to extract some water, we're able to kind of drop and move to that job pretty quickly and still work out of the same van. So that there's some fundamental differences there, but we found ways to kind of leverage the two models together in the equipment package and the van package and also within our CRMs.
Fascinating. Okay, yeah. So it sounds like, part of the advantage is probably just being set up from day one as this. And, it makes me think, this is going way back. I heard it on a podcast about, and this is a totally different category, but I promise the point's related, which is, in America, obviously credit cards are prevalent. And that is mainly because whenever it was 80s, 90s, we had the technology and to build the infrastructure for credit cards. And at the time, it was, very progressive and tech forward. However, then across the world in Asia, specifically, I believe it was Japan or maybe even China as well. Not as prosperous, not nearly as much of an economic boom, right? Like we had the tech boom in America in the late 90s or early 2000s. Anyway, they missed the whole credit card wave, but they jumped when smartphones became popularized. They jumped from cash basically straight to you can pay for anything anywhere on your phone. And like WeChat is a massive app there if people have heard of that. And now we're kind of actually stuck in this. People still use credit cards, but it would be so hard for America to jump to what they do in Asia because we already built all this infrastructure. So when you're speaking about the restoration and cleaning, even things like having your truck set up the right way, if a Restoration One or one of these big brands wanted to get into carpet cleaning, they have to get all their franchisees and change their systems at a pretty foundational level. So I'm going to guess that is part of the advantage. And it just, for anyone listening, think really strategically when you start a business because you go down a certain path, it can be hard to change things kind of at that base layer.
Well, really, really phenomenal analogy, and really is probably the thesis of Franchise Playbook, our holding company that owns Voda, is around this idea that we're the underdog. Like, we're not a PE firm with millions and billions of dollars under management, but we are operators. We're strong operators, and we understand how to put systems in place. And so what I would say about what we're doing is there's amazing home service platforms out there. They usually will acquire a franchisor with 50 plus units and a few million in EBITDA, and then they take that and they improve upon it. But they also inherit problems. They inherit mistakes that were made by the original founder or franchisor. And so our whole plan at Playbook has been, like with Zach, when we started, was like, hey, go out and write down like everything you would have done differently over the 10 years. You can't change now that system. It's just too late. And so I don't know how you compete with us in the sense that we have this ability to build for 2023 and ahead, and we're thinking out that far, 10, 20 years out. And we did that across the every department. Like our CMO also has like a decade in franchising, and so he came in saying, "Here's the mistakes they made at Anytime. Here's the not that they made Anytime's great, but he was at Anytime Fitness, Mayweather Boxing. You know, we're able to like give you an example because I'd love to get into operations for a moment.
Yeah.
Every area of our business and every business comes down to fundamental practices. That's why PE can go into like almost any business and be successful because there's MBA courses on how to run any business that you apply, right? And so when it comes to a franchisor, like there's the fran dev department. That's a whole area. That's a business in itself, finding the right people to buy our franchise. We're not picking people that off the street. We need people that fit our criteria that could be a good partner for us and vice versa. And so there's fran dev, but more importantly, it's like, how do you get customers, which we have a whole system of customer acquisition that we take off the plate of the franchisee. How do you answer the phones to book those jobs? That's a whole department. And then there's departments of training and hiring and really every siloed department, we have a leader or a system in place. But one of the examples to your point is like we're able to award a franchise to someone and say, look, this is how lead acquisition works in today's age. You need to invest into lead generation monthly, every single month for the rest of the time you own a business. Whereas at a previous system, like that may not be as easy. They didn't buy into that. Now you're changing things and we can't make that people do that. Whereas with our system, I don't want to say make, that's not the right wording, but we can strongly advise and in the time that they buy the franchise, they understand why they need to do that. We're not going behind or reversing what we said.
100%. I mean, yeah, it's just humans are habitual creatures. So yeah, if you get that new franchise owner and from day one, it's, hey, you invest in digital marketing or local marketing via XYZ channels. Once they get in that habit, if something new comes out in 10 years that, some artificial intelligence marketing, maybe that'll have to be a conversation you have. But yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. If someone's not used to it, operating their business a certain way, introducing what could look like a new expense, even though I firmly believe that, marketing should be thought of as an investment, not an expense. But regardless, right? Yeah, you guys are kind of starting off and setting the tone early. So I can definitely see that, being a pretty big advantage.
Another just quick example of that is like bookkeeping. Bookkeeping is something that like most people don't want to start that until they absolutely have to. And they let a few transactions go by. And the next thing you know, 3 months down the road, they're so far behind their books that they don't know where they are financially. About a month before they launch their business, our bookkeeper is already established, knows what the chart of accounts is, has already uploaded it, synced to their CRM, and they have to use it. I mean, there's just no way around that we know that you need a bookkeeper. We're going to take that off your plate and we're going to apply our vendor that knows our business well. And you just can't get around it at this point. And so you're locked in contract with that person for a year. And at that point, you can decide if you want to bring in your own person or whatever else. But for sure, that first year, we got you locked and loaded. And we do that in a number of different ways throughout our item 7 that you can check out.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, I'm shocked actually that at the level, like even some very big franchisors that really don't, they kind of just let their franchisee decide if they want a bookkeeper or don't want a bookkeeper. Whereas especially for franchising, right? And you just mentioned item 7. So we're talking the franchise disclosure document. Having a good sense of your franchisee's financials is critical. Especially if you want to present it in item 19. So, I love having that set up, and it's absolutely it's good for the franchisee, but it's also equally as important for you guys as a franchisor. So, and speaking of, I actually have your FDD up. Item 19, super impressive. I know, folks are new to the franchise world listening to this. There are some restrictions on what Dan and Zach can say, that whatever they have disclosed, they should legally be able to touch on briefly. But regardless, the highlights, 1.7 million in total gross revenue in 2022 for the company-owned business. And, about after the royalty and brand fund, I'm looking at a tiny bit over 400K in adjusted EBITDA. And that's after like around a $200 grand initial investment on the high end. So, yeah, I mean, it's super impressive. And this is right. This is the based on the financials from, the original founder Dragan in Virginia that was started in around 2009.
Yeah, I want to touch on something really quick, and then we'd love to dive into this.
Sure.
You know, one of the things, like, so I come from Fran Dev for my entire career. I've seen every single franchise come and go and succeed and not succeed. And like what we really are trying to be, and you and I have had a lot of conversations around this, which is around this idea of being really clear with what a business is and is not and what it takes. And so what I could tell you, like if someone's listening to this and they're interested in Voda, we've built a culture at corporate, which is, I think like Zach and my story is very similar in the sense that like we've both done well. And Zach also had a previous exit with a business he built, but we haven't done like our main thing yet. Like we were ready to do our thing. And our whole team here is like that. Guys and gals that have done well, but want to do their thing. And so I think we're attracting franchisees that want to be in on the ground level and be part of that kind of, I've done well, but I've been the number 2 guy. I'm ready to be number 1 kind of thing. But what I always preface is that one, like this business can definitely grow to be a manage the manager business where you're hands off, but that takes time.
Yeah.
Don't go into a business. I don't care. We had this call we had this morning with someone. He was actually building a stage. Like he's building the stage with his guys. He doesn't have to do that. But he said, guys, you want to build a business, you got to get your hands dirty. Like, and if anyone who tells you any way other is lying. I agree with that. I like to be in the trenches. I think people respect you when you're in the trenches. So I always preface that we have an amazing model that can be executive run, but you got to build the systems and you got to put some time in. Our item 19 is extremely strong, and that corporate business and restoration in general, if you look at the item 19s across many franchisors in restoration, they're strong, but it's a baseline, right? It's a baseline that you can look toward and go toward, but you're going to have to obviously start from day one and build up, and it takes time to build a business. But what we found is, I mean, you look at restoration, the average ticket is $2,700 in our restoration item 19, and carpet cleaning is $580. And so, you know, you can kind of understand like what a revenue per truck looks like and then kind of figure out how the business can perform.
It's fascinating. And, you know, I think a big thing with home services franchises, right, since they're not brick and mortar, the way that franchises define the territory is different than a brick and mortar brand. I noticed, I think in item 7, it was around a territory is 85,000 people. So, yeah, just any insights there for a potential franchisee that would be looking at this or any home services franchise, I guess, you know, on understanding, I guess, you know, like those corporate numbers, is that equivalent to a single territory or multiple territories? Which either way, I mean, it's just still looking like a great return. But those are important things, I think, for people to think about.
Yeah, we prelude our item 19 and we kind of talk about what the operating territory looks like for the founding location. And so, you know, when you don't have the constraints of a franchise, you kind of tend to operate wherever you get jobs. And over 10 years, you kind of spread yourself out a little bit more. Yep. And so we did find that about 70% of his revenue came from about 3 territories worth of our territory. So we do put that in our item 19. And when you do compare like our territories to other systems, it does seem like within home services that 80,000 owner-occupied housing units is really kind of the threshold of that. Some people project it out to like total population or whatever else. Yeah. We care about the homes. That's why we want to focus on the owner-occupied housing units. And so, and again, just to highlight a couple other points too, is like we want to give the potential people that are going to join us and a better idea of like what actually goes into these numbers. So really digging into how many contracts, was the average tickets of those contracts within restoration and carpet cleaning, because they are kind of different business models in one. And then we also want to say like, all right, what are our per van revenues? That van going to a home, you can't take that same van and go to 5 homes at one time. So now how do I start scaling this business? And by giving that information in our MIT and kind of extracting all the data from the 10 years plus of what our founding location has been in business for, we tried to give as best a picture as possible and a really realistic picture as well, so that they can take those numbers and now start putting together their own projections.
And sorry, just to piggyback one more thing on this area, because I think it's so important in franchising, because I've learned that item 19s are complex when you've never been in franchising to understand. And, Zach and I we share this ethos of like, let's just be as candid and transparent as we can. And if people, I think, respect that. And so, what I think franchisors sometimes, unfortunately, kind of leave out a little bit, and I just like to bring light to, is at the end of the day, like, you're going to make an investment. You're usually going to use some type of debt financing to do it through an SBA loan, or, you should. If you don't, fine. But think about your cash investment is going to be X number of dollars. And I can't tell people what their cash on cash is. That's up for them to figure out. But you want to look at your cash on cash return. But something to keep in mind when you grow a business to $1.7 million, for example, in revenue, you do need to add trucks. And I think that's with any company. But as you add the trucks, they're not cash like you're not buying a $70,000 truck with your profits of your business that you took home to your family, but you're financing another truck, and that's scaling as your revenues are scaling, and that's scaling with the business. But I think people like sometimes kind of forget that if like our tagline at Playbook is to empower entrepreneurs to think bigger. And what that means is like, we're looking for people that I'm kidding around, but like I would love a franchisee that played a team sport, right? Why? Because if you want a franchise that's not going to be holding you accountable and helping you succeed, and we're going to be your coach. And I used to hate my high school wrestling coach when he was yelling at me. But the reality was I still call that guy. I still have a relation. Like he cared about me succeeding as not just as a wrestler, but as a young man and as a man, right? And like we want to be the kind of organization where there's enough trust with each other where we can say to the franchisee, hey, listen, you told me you want to get to this revenue. Well, you got to buy another truck. You got to step up and get that next truck or you're never going to get there. So we're really looking for people that like have that shared kind of competitive mindset that we can be caringly candid and they should do it with us. Hey, you're not holding up to your area, and we'll definitely process them telling us if we need to be held accountable too.
No, for sure. I love the ethos of it, and yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of franchisors who can do better. Let's say in item 19, and you are if you're a franchisor, I would love to see the stakes be raised higher almost in franchising, in the sense of I don't get the vibe from the industry as a whole that franchising is this serious, let's call it sophisticated asset class, for lack of a better way to explain it. Because in reality, that's what it is. If you are trying to franchise your business, you are packaging up a concept and presenting it as a multi-6-figure, sometimes 7-figure, depending on the brand, investment opportunity. That is what it is at the end of the day. And it just, the casualness in which some franchisors are going about it. And I think there's this mindset that it's just, it could be a way for them to quickly get some franchisees in and they're going to get rich really quick. But that's not how it works. And so, yeah, I love kind of where you guys are taking it, because I do think people do need to take it seriously. Like if you're franchising, like you are in the big leagues because you're offering massive investment opportunities and you could be held responsible for it. So it's definitely not this casual, not everyone should be a franchisor. It's the bottom line. Like it's a big deal if you're going to try to franchise your business. And so, I think I hope others follow in the approach that you guys are taking.
Yeah, I'll stop here because we could have a whole conversation around this, but I couldn't agree with you more. We're fortunate that our business is in DC area. And so I'm pretty involved with the IFA, the International Franchise Association. I was having lunch with a leader there and we were having this exact conversation. And I think you'll see more self-regulation as an industry. At the end of the day, like no one wants government regulation if they can avoid it. You should be able to, hopefully be a good actor and do the right thing as an industry. And I think you'll see that happen as an industry first. And hopefully that happens. And then I think, you will see more, and there should be more regulation from government. And so I think like we're just trying to carve that path as much as we can. And, if it means that we don't, get someone that, thought they could just buy this thing and do nothing, then that's okay with us, because we want people that fit our culture and want to build something, and make an impact in their community.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I love it. And just final question here as we're wrapping up. So what's the, I know you guys are at the beginning of your journey here, but what's the overall goal, I'd say, with Voda, but then also that holding company franchise Playbook, do you have like a North Star sort? Like, are you trying to become the next Neighborly Brands, or what's your guys thinking down the road?
Well, I'll say what I think, and then Zach jump in. But our vision for franchise Playbook, which holds Voda, is we want to have 10 brands. Our North Star is by 2030. I always preface that like the amount we're bought in on Voda is unreal. Like I just was on a podcast. I'm in the process of wrapping my own car in Voda swag, man. I live for Voda. And so does everyone on the team. So the next brand is probably going to take some time. We want to really get this thing rocking, but we want to have 10 brands. What's a little bit different about us and our thesis is the idea is that each brand complements the next in a way that it's cross promotional. So like, for example, we're heavily looking at plumbing because plumbing is a major lead source for restoration. And so we love the idea that either we can award a plumbing territory to someone and now they can work with the restoration, or a multi-brand franchisee can say, hey, why not own the lead source that I work with? When your faucet leaks, you call the plumber. So we're looking to do that over time. And we're really trying to grow this as preserve this culture, which is a very much like, we're like I said, we're kind of the underdog. We're operating together. We don't have any, we're not private equity backed. We want to make this built, we want to build this organically. And I put a good amount of my capital into this to make sure it was set up from an infrastructure standpoint. But we want to do this, want to just do it right. But if that's slow, that's okay too. Like sometimes you got to go slow to go fast.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, it sounds super exciting, and I think you guys are off to a good start with Voda. So, I'm excited to kind of see where you guys take it. If someone's listening to this and wants to either get in touch with you guys directly or Voda and inquire about the franchise, is there a good spot online to follow along for you guys or the brand?
Yeah, definitely check out myvodafranchise.com to get all the website stuff about owning a franchise. Check us out on social media. We got Facebook, Instagram. Dan's heavily into TikTok as well, so check that out. And Dan's podcast as well. There's a lot of good information about Voda there.
Maybe not TikTok. It's getting there. I'm trying. I get very few likes, but I'm not going to give up.
Playing the long game. Content is definitely the long game. All right, well, that's great, guys. Look, this was a lot of fun. I love what you're doing, and thanks for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for listening to Franchise Empires. We're coming to you soon with actionable insights to take the next step on your franchise journey. So make sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen.